back to my channel. I took a hiatus. If you didn't know why, review my last video, you'll understand. But anyways, I am finally back. I'm in a much better place. I am ready to kick things off with yet another movie review. And what better one to do than X-Men's Dark Phoenix? I've got notes. I got some issues with this movie. Okay, so if you don't know what X-Men Dark Phoenix is about, it is the fourth in the prequel series. So basically, you know, they did X-Men, X2, and then X-Men The Last Stand. They did a whole bunch of spin-offs with Wolverine. There were like 3 of them, including Logan. Then they did X-Men First Class, which was supposed to be set before the first X-Men, like way before basically how the whole thing started. Then you had X-Men Days of Future Past, where they basically were in the past, but they were also in the future, and they changed and totally just retconned and got rid of the entirety of X-Men The Last Stand, because that movie, spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, killed off a whole bunch of characters that should not have ever been killed off. Then they did X-Men Apocalypse, and I enjoyed it for entertainment purposes. Storyline, it was kind of meh. Now this is the fourth one. Where do I begin? Basically, you have... The movie starts off with, you know, having Jean Grey as a kid, kind of like learning about her powers, but she's not sure how to control them or how to really utilize them to the purpose of really what they're meant for. Until Professor X comes in, he kind of like saves the day by basically taking her under his wing and training her to become the Jean Grey that we now know. Things happen, they go to space, rescue a whole bunch of people who are like stranded in space because of this weird solar flare. That's not actually a solar flare, it's like some alien species that then goes into Jean and she becomes the Phoenix. She has no idea how to control her powers, she becomes way too powerful for everybody. In Last Stand, Jean Grey, when she got this power, she went on like a killing rampage. Whereas this one, it's more, she doesn't know how to control it, so when she feels a certain type of emotion, it gets enhanced by like 1,000, and then she just goes with that emotion until it's done, and then she's like, shit, what did I do? So that one, I did like the take on this a lot better. Let's just start with the pros, okay? We'll start with the pros. It's a short list. The effects, I thought, were really good. The effects were very good. Like, considering it's, you know, mutants and random powers and things that you know for a fact would never happen, they were good. I found the action being well done. There was a good amount of action. Even at the beginning when it was a slower part of the film, the action was still consistent enough to keep your attention with the storyline. Sophie Turner excelled as Jean Grey. I thought she was the best acting-wise in this movie. She sold that role for me. She embodied Jean Grey. I thought she was honestly better than Famke Janssen. And yeah, I thought, like, Jean Grey has always been one of my favorite characters in the X-Men, and she definitely made me like her a whole lot more in this role. Storm was cool. I mean, personally, I like the Halle Berry version of Storm more. I thought she brought more to the character than this one, but Storm's cool. The situations that either people or the X-Men or just mutants in general found themselves in were somewhat believable, but again, you kind of have to just keep your mind open because it's mutants with superpowers, so how believable can that actually be? And my final pro is, it was slightly better than X-Men Last Stand. That being said, let's get into the cons, shall we? The timeline I'm honestly lost with the timeline. I don't know if there was ever a thing that came out and said, you know, here's this timeline you're used to, here's where it branches off, here's the fix, and it branches off into this one, which makes this one happen. I don't know if that ever happened, so this whole con point could be just null and void, but right now, to me, according to what has happened in these films, I would assume it's kind of the one timeline, because with them going with First Class, that is the prequel to X-Men. Then Days of Future Past was a prequel, it was a sequel to First Class, a prequel to X-Men, but also a retcon / sequel to X2 / The Last Stand. So they basically did that. Then they did Apocalypse, which would have been another sequel to Days of Future Past, but only the past portion. And then it would have had Dark Phoenix. But there's events that happen in Dark Phoenix that don't make sense, especially with the ending of Days of Future Past. So I don't know what's happening. And if it is a sequel, if Days of Future Past is a sequel to X2, then there's a character at the end of X2 that's still alive that isn't in Dark Phoenix. So we're going to get into that now. Dark Phoenix also kills off some characters. I'm not going to say who, but they kill off characters that should still be alive or have been shown that they are alive in past films in our current timeline and not in this alternate universe ? Like, I don't know what is going on here. I don't get it. The ending of Dark Phoenix was very meh. It was very lackluster. Like, I was very not blown away. I wasn't surprised. I wasn't not surprised. It was just kind of eh. The climax of the film was kind of meh as well. It was just very bland. Like, it was just something, you knew everything was going to happen. You knew the certain things that were going to happen. You knew the steps they were going to take in this film to get to the final outcome. And it was just eh. Also, with the effects, they also did something that I did not like. With Quicksilver, when he runs, everything slows down. Fine, do that, because you need to show, like, how fast he's actually moving. Granted, okay. But then Sophie Turner's Dark Phoenix, every time she was, like, attacking someone in the big final battle, it would just be, like, slow down. So there was way too much slow motion effects. Because she could have easily just been like, bam, 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 like whatever. But instead, it was just like, I'm just going to go really fast and then stop. And just as I'm attacking, everything's slowing down. And I didn't like that. I thought they could have left that out because, spoiler alert, she's not Quicksilver. But speaking of Quicksilver, he had a very minor to non-existent role at all. Cool. He was in like the first 20 minutes of the film and then shows up at the end. That's it. He has no other point in this movie. He's just there just to be Quicksilver. That's it. I was mad. I was very mad because he was like a big character in Apocalypse and in Days of Future Past. But he had next to no role at all in this film. Like, why bother having him in it at all if you're not going to have him in the film? The backstories of characters in this film were very muted. It was just very, here's a quick backstory. Okay, next. Move on. Let's get to the actual movie. It's like, I get you don't want to do like a whole origin story, but at the same time, especially if you're introducing like a new power / villain / character, you need to have a bit of a backstory. And like the villain in this was very, like everyone criticizes Marvel for having generic villains. This was the most generic villain I've ever seen. Alien race comes to Earth, turns into humans, wants to find Jean Grey. That's it. They had no motivation. There was nothing. It was just whatever. They end up revealing their motivation later on, but it was like not a good enough motivation. I had watched a video last night full of like Easter eggs, and it was actually talking about this race of alien that comes to try and find Jean and their backstory on why they're there. And if they had have explained that in this movie, that would have been so much better and have had an actual motivation to come to Earth to try and find her than what they gave them, which was literally, I saw the Phoenix and I came to find you. Great. The acting in this movie, aside from Sophie Turner, was not that great. Okay? Charles Xavier, boring. Super boring the entire time. Hank was boring. He was just kind of useless. He was moping around. It was just boring. Magneto, boring. He was also someone who was basically non-existent in this film. He shows up maybe halfway through the film and has, again, a minor role and is just barely in it. Does a few of his little metal tricks and then that's it. Done. Nightcrawler was another one that kind of irritated me in this because in the last film, I thought he was a really, really good character. This one, they just kind of like got rid of everything about him and he was just like, oh, I don't want to do anything. I don't want to hurt anybody. I need to save everybody, but we need to go and I don't want to get everyone in trouble. Then next thing you know, he's in this big fight and there's like they're in a truck and they're locked up and the soldier walks by. Next thing you know, the aliens come in, they start trying to kill everybody. X-Men are set free to try and help out and he ends up poofing to try and get the guy away from the alien race and poofs away and we find out this guy gets stabbed or shot or I don't know, something. We don't know how this guy is now all of a sudden dying, but it's just like, he's like, oh no, don't die, don't die. And then the guy dies, so then he starts like, he just snaps. Goes angry, and literally goes on a killing rampage. What the hell was that? A, you don't know this guy. B, when did you get this emotional attachment to this person? And C, when did you just become like all of a sudden like a killer when you were just like, oh no, I don't want to do anything, I don't want to hurt anybody. And then all of a sudden just like, I don't fucking care. And what happened? Like, where was that switch? There were a lot of mutants in this as well that I don't read comics. I just watch the films. If you don't read the comics, you are not going to know at least half of the mutants that they show in this because it's mainly like a fan service to those who know the comics. But for those of us who don't read the comics, not a single name is dropped aside from the main characters. That's it. If you're going to introduce new characters, literally introduce them. Don't just like put them on the screen and be like, oh yeah, by the way, here's some mutants. There's one of the X-Men as well, out of nowhere, just randomly says fuck. Just out of nowhere. No, it's from what I remember, the only other time that fuck was ever mentioned in an X-Men film, aside from Logan, was an X-Men First Class when they're going around recruiting people and they go up to Wolverine for that brief cameo moment that he had.
Excuse me, I'm Eric Lenstra.
Charles Xavier.
Go fuck yourself.
Other than that, there's been no F-bombs until this movie. And it came from like a character who you wouldn't really even expect to say that. So it was just very out of character. For me anyways, I thought it was very out of character for that character to say it. I was just like, okay. Random. The ending of the movie, like I said, was very boring, but it was also not explained. Like, it ties in with the timeline, kind of like how I touched it. It's very boring, things are happening, but then it kind of like pans off, and then you like see something, and it's like, okay, well, are they or are they not? And I know that's very vague. I'm trying not to do spoilers for like big things, like little spoilers that really have no like plot purpose. Sorry if you don't want those either, but those are my reviews. But like at the end, there's two characters sitting and talking, but it kind of like pans away and then you see something. And you're just left with, okay, well, was the event before this fake and everyone thought this way, or was it real and it's just like, this is now happening, like I don't know. And then again with the timeline, how does this ending fit in with another timeline that you've created? Like when they altered the past to change the future, did that like branch off and this is like its own separate timeline? Or is it still part of the normal timeline that's supposed to lead up to the ending of Days of Future Past? I don't know. If you want to see it for visual aspects, do go see it. I wouldn't go see it for the story. I wouldn't go see it just because it's X-Men. If you do go see it, it's a Tuesday movie. Go on the cheap night. If it's not a Tuesday for you, maybe it's like a Thursday. I don't know. Whatever your cheap movie nights are, when it's like half price tickets or like quarter price tickets or whatever, go on those days. Because this movie is definitely not worth full price. I'm glad that I used my scene points to go and see this to make it a free movie. Because not that good. Honestly, really not that good. I had high hopes and I was let down. Now, Rotten Tomatoes currently is at a 22% according to critics. Audience gives it about a 65%. I disagree with both of those. My score for Dark Phoenix is a 56%. That's like a D. It's like just barely passable. Okay? So, bear that in mind, especially for all of you who know me and always claim that I love every movie that I see. This movie is not that good. I was very critical about this movie, because I had very high hopes for this movie. Especially for it being one of the last X-Men movies. Very disappointed. I hope you enjoyed my movie review. If you did, be sure to give it a like. Make sure that you comment down below whether or not you agree with me or if you disagree. And let me know your favorite X-Men movie out of all of the ones created. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you hit the notification bell so you know when I post a new video. I will see you all next time. Bye.
My life is a party, my home is the club. I party like a rock star, dance until I drop. My life is